morning year 4, and this is your maths video for if you've got this booklet on Thursday the 4th of February. Now I'm going to start by saying a very big well done, and that's to Tucker. A fantastic effort at home, Tucker, and not just in your maths but in everything, so please keep up the great work. Now this week we've been looking at fractions. Okay, so before we get started on today's learning, we're just going to recap some of the new vocabulary or new words that we've learned to do with fractions. Okay, so remember, a fraction is a part of a whole, isn't it? And the numerator is the number at the top of our fraction, and it tells us how many we have. The denominator is the number at the bottom of the fraction, and that tells you how many pieces the whole has. And we've also got a new word for today, so this one is equivalent. So I'm going to say that again, and then I want you to say it. Equivalent, equivalent. And equivalent means equal or the same. I want to see if anybody can remember what equivalent means a little bit later, okay? So, we're going to start by playing a game, and my game is called Match It Up. And we're going to match fractions that are represented using numbers and represented using pictures. Okay, so let's get our game loaded. So I'm going to start with this one. Have a little think. How many pieces are there all together? That's the bottom number. How many pieces are there shaded? See if we can figure out the fraction. Now I can't see it written using numbers, so is there another visual that shows half as well? There is. Well done if you spotted that one. Next one then, let's go for this one. 1/4, because remember when it's a 4 at the bottom we say quarter. So 1/4, can anybody spot where 1 out of 4 is shaded? That's this one down here. Well done if you spotted that. Next then. So think about what we've got shaded, how many there are all together, and it's represented using numbers for this one, year 4. Brilliant. 1/3. Let's go for that one. Can we spot the same fraction? Brilliant. It's another visual this time. What about that one then? So we've got 2 shaded, and there are 3 all together. So we've got 2 shaded out of 3. And then finally, so I've got all of the square shaded. We've got the whole, which we represent as a fraction that way. We've got the 1 piece out of the whole. Okay. Now, I'm not going to carry on to level 2, but I will send the link out to you via Marvellous Me so that you can play the game at home as well. Okay, so today's learning then, year 4. It says, can I find fractions of amounts? And we had a go at this yesterday. But yesterday we used pictures to help us to find fractions of amounts, and today we're going to be using numbers instead. Okay, so it says find a quarter of the numbers. Now when we're finding a quarter, how many will the whole be split into? You might want to use my clues down here to help you. So it would be split into 4. And you'll notice here that I've got my whole and I've split it into 1, 2, 3, 4 equal pieces. But we're working with numbers, remember, so the whole is 8. So all together in here there would be 8. And to find a quarter, I'm going to share 8 equally into my 4 groups. Okay, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So who thinks they can figure out what 1/4 of 8 would be? So you're just going to count the dots. That's in one of these squares. So that's 2. Brilliant. Okay, so there we shared it using our visual representation. But what happens when our number gets bigger? It will take ages to share 28 dots. So can anybody think of a times table that we could use to help us to find a quarter? So we can use our 4 times tables, can't we? So we're going to count in 4s until we get to 28. Count along with me at home. 4, 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, 28. So I counted 7 times, which means 1/4 of 28 equals 7. So if we look at your activity today, Year 4, that's what question number 1 is asking you to do. To find a quarter of these numbers. So write the number that is 1/4 of 16, 20, 12 and 24. And remember, you're going to be using your 4 times tables to help you there. Okay. Question number 2 then is asking you this time to find 1/3 of these numbers. And remember, when we're finding 1/3, the whole is split into 3 pieces. So again, I've got my whole split into 1, 2, 3 equal pieces. So let's get my pen. I've got 9 as my whole, and I'm going to share it into my 3 groups. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So who now can figure out what 1/3 of 9 is? So you're just going to count the dots in 1/3. And that's 3. But remember, when our numbers get a little bit bigger, it takes too long to do this. So we can use our times tables, can't we? And what times tables are we going to be using? We're going to use our 3s. So let's count up in 3s until we get to the number 21. 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 18, 21, 7. So this is telling us that 1/3 of 21 equals 7. And Year 4, that's exactly what you've got to do for question 2. So you've got some numbers and you've got to figure out what 1/3 of those numbers are. And remember, for this, we're going to use our 3 times tables. Okay. You might want to pause the video whilst you complete question 2. Okay, so well done for having a go at those 2 questions. And now I've set you a bit of a tricky challenge. Do you think you're up for it? And it says to circle the fraction of amount, which is the biggest. So we've got to figure out what 1/4 of 4 is. So we're going to count in fours until we get to 4. 4. So I counted 1 time there. 1/2 of 8. So we're going to count in 2s because that's our denominator until we get to 8. 2, 4, 6, 8. That was 4 times. And then 1/3 of 6. Counting 3s till we get to 6. 3, 6. That was 2. And now it's asking you to circle the fraction of amount which is the biggest. So which of these is the biggest? Because it's asking you to think about money. And if these were amounts of money, so if that was £1 or £4 or £2, which would you prefer? We'd want the biggest, wouldn't we? So we would circle this one. Have a go now at the bottom one on your own. Fantastic then, year 4. So if we've got 1/4 of 8 would be 2. 1/2 of 4 would be 2. And 1/3 of 9 would be 3. Which of those amounts would we want? And we'd want this one. Well done if you got that correct at home. And don't forget, when you take your picture, to take a picture of this challenge as well so I can see what you've been up to. Okay. Now at the start of our lesson today, I introduced you to a new word, and that word was equivalent. Can anybody remember what equivalent means? Have a little think. You might want to rewind the video to the start where we spoke about it. Okay, so equivalent means the same. And you'll notice here that on each of my fractions, there's the same amount coloured in. The bottom half is all coloured in. But this fraction, so we've got 1 coloured, and there are 2 all together, so that would be a half. The next one, we've got 2 coloured in, 1, 2, and there are 4 all together. But there's the same amount if we look at the pictures. Okay, so it's equivalent. Let's figure out the next one. So we've got 3 coloured in, and there are 6 all together. But again, it's equivalent because if we look, we've still got this bottom half that's shaded. And the final one then, year 4, so we've got 4 coloured in, and all together there are 8. So even though the fraction has been written using different numbers, different numerators and different denominators, the same amount is given each time, okay? And that will help you with your next question. So, if on your booklet, remember we are on page 19, let's now go to question number 3. It says, shade the circles to show that 2 fractions are equivalent. So 2 fractions are the same. Here we've got 2 quarters, so you're going to colour in 2 of those quarters. And here we've got 1/2. 1/2, so you're going to colour in 1. And I want you to see if they look the same if you've coloured 1 of these in and 2 of these in. Okay. Now I don't want you to complete question 4 today because we'll come back to that at another point. Okay, so leave question 4 and let's go on to our challenge to end our lesson. And it's a true or false challenge, and it says 1/4 of 20 is 5. And remember, when we're finding a quarter, we have to share it by 4, and we can do that by using our 4 times tables. So is 1/4 of 25 true, or is it false? So to end today's lesson then, Year 4, let's roll our dice and have a little think about our learning today. Let's see what number we will land on. Number 4. What did you find tricky? Now remember, when you take your picture, I want to see your picture from the book. The 2 challenges from the board, so where you are finding fractions of amounts and the true or false question. And I would also like to see your answer to this question. What did you find tricky?